But I happened a few months ago.
I think it was some publishing.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Right. Great opportunity for exercise.
Although we were in
But we're gonna do years of sales.
Yeah.
Or, you know, this just. So, anyway, so we're
Thank you.
talking more.
Thank you for
Yeah,
being
nice to meet you.
Good to see you. At least in,
Maybe.
on the big island.
Yeah.
They don't come.
So you went down for a while?
They're like, you could beat up the monkey. Yeah.
And I mean. It was like nice for you to come. Now the weather's very good.
Your infrastructure. So
Go down, walk down by the river there.
Drop you off. Yeah, they're bad.
No, I drove her in.
Oh, God. Nice.
Yeah, we did. We actually put.
I love my husband.
I played a lot.
It was, I mean, blind corners on those cliffs and.
Up there?
Oh, yeah. Wait, is it Mexico?
Up here?
Line corners. They don't even have like listing of rain.
Good thing I'm skinny, right?
They don't even. You just literally get a car.
Well, that explains the thing.
Morning, Ron. But yeah. Good morning. Yeah, the older than sleep. You can tell if somebody wanted to go a little fast and probably look. Although I was. Yeah. I nearly took Joe out. Yeah, exactly. That's what I needed. I over there where they're going, yeah, they go. Yeah, they like crisscross and.
Yeah, they don't necessarily, it's all.
We're gonna start a couple minutes later. Brad had sent me a message this morning saying that that when he logs on at 9, we're already on, so there may be a clock difference or something like that. So we'll wait a couple minutes.
We're 3 minutes early.
Yeah.
I'll look at that one down there.
Yeah.
Cause that one's never doing any.
Right, he thinks that maybe this doesn't sync with his.
Huh. So. I'll tell them.
Easy going. Different time zone in California.
Was it Northern California or state?
Different states.
There you go.
I've lived in both.
Different states of mind.
There's probably a private room. Yeah.
Got it? I got it. Wait a minute. Yeah, I'm gonna wait till they're ready.
There he is. There he is. Morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, well, let's start early then, since. Good morning, everybody. This is the, November 15th, 2025 Board of, the work session for Sun River Association. A couple of things to clear up before we begin. Jackie had indicated that if anybody's here for design review, that had to be moved over to the Fleet Building for design review this morning. This is our.
We're here.
Yeah, because we're here. We bumped them out. Secondly, let's do roll. And then another matter that's inserted into the agenda. Vice President Hayes. Here. Treasurer Peterson here, Secretary Mobley.
Here.
Neil Harrison. Is here on Zoom, and I think he said.
He's on mute.
Yeah. Linda Beard, present. Randy Schneider. Here. Brad Banta.
Here.
Via Zoom, and Ronnie Jacknow.
Here.
Okay. James, you had something you wanted to talk about?
Well, first, we'll do staff. James Lewis, General
Oh,
Manager.
yeah.
Little vacation.
Gary Seifert, IT.
Becky Sylvester, admin.
Joe Healy, Controller.
Patty Gentilino, Natural Resources.
Kelly Allen, HR.
Keith Caceres, Assistant General Manager. Richie from IT.
Okay, James, you had a comment? or-
I do, before we start, take this opportunity to recognize an employee that you all know, you've known for a long time here at SROA,
Oh,
Becky Sylvester. Tomorrow, we do have a certificate and some more for you, but, tomorrow is Becky's 30th anniversary for working on us.
You started here when you were 12?
60.
So from a staff perspective, I've been here 6 years and I want to thank Becky because she makes my life easier in terms of there was a lot of catching up that I had to do, and whether it was finding documents or history on Sun River, history on, why did the board make this decision? She helps me and she helps everybody in that fashion. She keeps the office flowing. If there is something that needs to be done, Becky will do it. If there's something that needs to be done, Becky knows how to do it, even more importantly. Most, only 90%. So, and I hope that I'm speaking for all the staff as well, that you've worked with for a long time, some of those, a lot longer than with me. So I want to say from a staff perspective, general manager working with you, thank you very much. And we're looking forward to another 30 years. So,
Well, and on behalf of the board,
Yeah.
echoing what James has already said, selfishly, you saved my butt a lot. And,
happy to do so.
the continuity that you've provided, it also speaks to the environment. I mean, I think this has been obviously a great fit for you, but you've been a great fit for us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So,
Thank you all very much.
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's rare
Thank
that
you,
people
Becky.
spend 30 years anymore. in
Yeah.
a job.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
thank you.
Winston, I
So-
thought you guys wanted to talk about minutes. I know.
That's coming.
so if tomorrow's your anniversary, are you working tomorrow?
Taking the day off.
So-
Celebrate.
We have a
Thank
certificate that I give to you, and then we have some flowers, and there's another gift out there.
That's
Give to you in a little bit after we have the minute discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to take a picture down. My office is supposed to be done.
Okay.
Thank
back-
you, Becky.
Enough of that. Back to the regular agenda. Owners forum.
That was it.
All right, so in the owners forum, we give you 3 minutes. Sometimes we'll give a little bit more depending upon the topic and the time needed. And we thank you for coming and giving us your comments. We greatly appreciate it. We do like to hear from you directly, so thanks for spending your time with us today. Why don't we start with Bill?
With your full name and address.
Yeah, it's Bill Weimer and live in Aquila Lodge, number 10, right over the fence from here.
What's your head, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've already got 2 rolling around in here.
Don't don't panic, I'm only gonna be talking about talking point page 2. The page numbers are on the lower right-hand corner of this handout. So, if I could get you to look at that, and actually, again, my name is Bill Weimer. I am a full-time resident here. I love this place. And, I'm very concerned about its future. I was here, some of you might recall, in January, right after the LA fires. And, I came here, I've retired here 2 years ago. And for 2 years, I've been comprehending the magnitude of what's going on here and the risk. And, I'm trying to participate and be supportive. And, so this is my second attempt to get your attention, to something that I think is going to shape our future for sure. If you start on page 3, and then we're gonna come back to page 2. So again, don't panic. The rest of this is support material. This is on the lower half of this page is a diagram from the Oregon Fire Marshal's office on recommended defensible space best practices. I brought this back in January. Some of you may have seen this. But I wanted to really focus on this because what they are recommending is 10-foot drip line spacing between trees and between trees and structure. And I've talked to their office quite a bit to better understand this and the whys behind it. And it's significant, and there's a lot of folks that participated in creating these recommendations. And when you look at this diagram, again, 10-foot drip line spacing, how many homes in this community are in compliance with this? Think about your own home.
From the house?
10 feet drip line from the house. Okay, good,
Hey, Randy.
good.
For taking its time.
Sorry. Using up this time.
Yeah, anyway, so, you probably confirm my statistics, because I've done my own little surveys and 1 out of 20, maybe 2 out of 20, would be in compliance. So, the Oregon Fire Marshal's recommendations on tree proximity and spacing are clear and more extensive than our current Sunriver ladder fuel plan. I appreciate the work of the Department of Natural Resources. I honor Patty for her commitment to protect trees and restore the Ponderosa. But in my opinion, based on studying this, the pendulum has swung too far towards tree protection at the expense of our homes. We have too many close proximity trees in Sunriver. I asked Rod, our assistant fire chief, about the current state of wildfire mitigation in Sunriver. And he stated, our common areas are not too bad, but our homes are a disaster waiting to happen. Clark, you wrote an article, it's in a copy of it's here, in the scene, Sunriver scene this past summer, calling out the lack of home wildfire maintenance. Close proximity trees create excessive wildfire maintenance. And yet we have to remember that 80% of our homes are not occupied on a regular basis. People aren't here to clean up. Literally, you need to clean up if you have ponderosas hanging over your house every week, you know that. And I've got some pictures attached. So I have 2 requests. Number 1, the SROA board immediately create a wildfire risk mitigation committee, not task force, committee. Now it may have to evolve to a committee. But this problem is not going to go away. And the magnitude of the work that needs to be done, just enrolling homeowners in what needs to be done is huge. I think it should include homeowners, experts or from our staff, experts from the fire department, from the police, representatives from the Oregon Fire Marshal's office and Deschutes County, the Department of Forestry, and anyone else deemed necessary to give us a complete picture of what's needed and an action plan to complete it as soon as possible. My second request is our current Sunriver ladder fuel plan needs to be updated to fully embrace the Oregon Fire Marshal's recommendations. And communications begin immediately with homeowners with expedited tree removal approval to allow homeowners to go to work on maximizing their defensible space. Right now, we can't do that. And so those are my two requests. I'm not advocating for a clear cutting of trees, especially the ponderosa. However, close proximity ponderosas need to be removed along with other close proximity trees. Everything is at stake. A major wildfire in Sun River will forever change this community. The business model, Clark, you and I talked about this at the end of the meeting. This business model, the revenue that's generated to support this infrastructure and all of the work that needs to be done in this community would be severely damaged if we have a wildfire. Severely damaged, maybe destroyed. Here's the liability that you folks are dealing with here is huge. I sit on boards, I understand board responsibilities. This liability is huge. And if you're not doing everything possible to mitigate wildfire risk, when a fire hits, because it will hit, and there are hundreds of homes lost, and heaven forbid, lives, the litigation and lawsuits will be through the roof. Reduce federal funding. Now, there's an article attached for wildfire prevention is at risk right now and getting more at risk in the future. So to finalize, we could be only one dry, hot summer away from that major devastation. I would appreciate a written response from you by December 1st.
Okay. Thank you for your time. We appreciate this and all the research that went into it. One note as well, there's an article in Ben Magazine this month that shows diagrams that the footage is a little different. So I think there's different. It's too bad that Oregon doesn't have his act together to get the standards right amongst the different publications, but I just wanted to call that out. But Bend is also doing things as well, so I just wanted to call that out. Right. When? Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here on a little bit of a lighter note.
Real quick, just.
Oh yes, my name is Gwen Gamble and I live at 34 Fremont Crossing and I'm a full-time resident here in Sun River. Thank you for that reminder. Some of you may know of Gary Bigham. He is a longtime homeowner and resident in Sun River. He's served on the board here and the board of directors at the Nature Center. But more importantly, for some of us who enjoy recreation, Gary Bigham started Petanque in Sun River. And I'm here to ask the SROA rename the Petanque Court in honor of Gary Bigham, the person who brought Petanque to our community. Gary introduced the game to Sun River in June 2019, when a small group of curious players first gathered on the baseball diamond at Fort Rock Park to give it a try. From that modest beginning, his enthusiasm, teaching, and leadership have helped Petanque flourish in the Sun River. Today, thanks to Gary's effort, we have a dedicated court at Mary McCallum Park and a growing roster of over 43 members. He's been instrumental in teaching new players through his always sold out, oversubscribed Sun River U classes. And he always creates a welcoming and inclusive environment for beginners and experienced players. Petanque has even become a featured event at our annual community picnic every July. Under Gary's leadership, Sun River has also hosted several tournaments that have attracted guests, players from Bend, Eugene, Portland, and Edmonds, Washington, putting our community on the regional Petanque map. Most notably, he established the Sun River Petanque Club as an official member of the Club of the Federation of Petanque USA, giving our local players meaningful connections to a broader Petanque community. To honor Gary's vision, dedication, and lasting contributions, the Sun River Petanque Club proposes naming the court after Gary Bigham. This simple yet meaningful way to recognize the individual who turned a small pastime event at the baseball field to a thriving, lasting part of the Sun River recreation experience. We respectfully ask for your support in approving the request, and I believe the request has been submitted to Becky at the main office, but we just want you to hold that in your heart as it's time to make decisions. Thank you.
Gary did sit up here.
Yes, he did. He's a wonderful example of community member.
Okay.
He also served on the recycling task force.
Yes, he did.
That's a major right.
I have two to read in.
To read two.
Yeah. Before I read these in, I also want to note for the record, or part of the record, that there were some other emails that weren't requested to be read in, but they were asked to be forwarded to the board and make part of the record. And I sent those to you, but getting it on today's record, one was from Josh Lawson. And again, it was regarding the ability, it was regarding our OWL system potentially, and the clarity that's provided via these meetings and request for additional or different equipment. And then there were two by Gary Orzel. One was regarding sewer fees, and one was regarding resort and the golf response to the resort's golf actions. And then the two to read in, both are from Paul Conte at 7 and 8 Mackenzie. And I'm going to summarize these. I sent these to you via email today. So for our policy, they're kind of lengthy. I'm going to summarize them, but I want to, again, for the record, they were forwarded to the board in their entirety, and it'll be made part of the record in their entirety. The first one is regarding the rules task force that has been meeting. We're going to have an update on that in a little bit. He said his comments basically were, he stated it's very dysfunctional to post a meeting agenda immediately before a monthly meeting. Then he referred to the several sets of proposed changes in different formats that were posted to the rule task force section of our webpage, where we're posting all of the meeting notes and meeting agendas. And then he went on, he cited various sections of that the work of the task force that has been posted to our webpage. The second one, he is referring to 2 points. One, he's requesting Community Development Department provide to him the number of citations issued since November 1st for violation of the tree protection rules. And essentially, he goes on to talk about his about the timelines for enforcement, how we're following our timelines for enforcement. The second issue is the status of the necessary reinspection by our staff or volunteers of the design committee regarding the status of how do quaking aspens fit within the tree protection rules as being recognized as a tree as those rules are written. So he goes on to make his statements about what he believes. But again, you can read those that have been provided to you. That's all I have.
Okay, next is admissions model work group update from Keith Saris.
Yes. Thank you, President Burke. You all will look in the back section of section 3 in your board books, just behind the GM report. You will see, as we noted last month, we reduced this report down to kind of a one-page report. So there's not a lot to report in regards to the change between the end of September versus the end of October. We're still down about 7% for member preference sales versus where we were last year. However, we're still up 12 homes in Recreation Plus, so that's great. Overall attendance at Shark is very similar to last year, even though it showed we're down 4,400, but we know that had some of software data tracking earlier this year that caused some of the data to be inaccurate. But overall, if you look at the overall budget for MPP, we're at 92.6% of budget. We're already almost 102% of budget for Recreation Plus. And the gate budget, we're already at 100% of gate budget as well. So as a reminder, we have two big holiday periods coming up, Thanksgiving here in 2 weeks, and then we have the Christmas holidays. So any that we'll get additional gate revenue from those two holiday periods, without question. And so that'll add to the additional gate revenue for the year. Overall, Shark event space, we are down about 28,000 total for the year versus our budget for last year, or where we were last year. However, and speaking with our events manager and team, we're already at about almost $80,000 booked for next year already for the event space, which is about 30,000 ahead of where we were last year booked for the following year. So we're in really good shape. Great. That's a pickleball done for the season, and also the cafe is done for the season. So no real additional. But what I wanted to get into before Joe gives his presentation is, as a reminder, the emission model work group, starting September of each year, the emission model work group starts working on fees for services for the following year. So we had 3 meetings. We had the September meeting, the October, and the November meeting. And out of those 3 meetings, the recommendation that was presented to you all, a few changes, not many. So typically we look at every single department in regard to proposed changes for the following year. Back in 2024 for 2025, we made quite a few changes across multiple departments. But we did not do that the plan was not for that for 2026. But the major changes are looking at member preference going from $85 to $90 per card. So a $5 per card increase there. Recreation Plus going from $340 per card to the $345 per card. And then extended household, which are those are over the age of 23 that are part of the family. That card price is going from $200 to $210. So recommendation there. And we also brought back, we have not had this program since 2015, but we brought back it's called Off-Season Aquatic Pass. So it's an opportunity for people that live in Central Oregon basically to have, if they want to come swim during the off-season, they can buy a pass ahead of time that gives them unlimited access during rec swim hours, basically from post Labor Day through Memorial Day.
At what cost?
That is $225 per card. And so the plan will be to start, if improved, the plan will be to start promoting that here starting next week. And then we will have it like an idea for stocking stuffers for people for this Christmas. So get them excited about the upcoming year. So that's the goal there. And then also one of the kind of final major change was we have not adjusted gate pricing since 2023. So the recommendation is to move gate from $30 per person to $32 a person, ages 4. When you do that, it triggers. So right now, if an owner wants to bring a guest in after they've used all their guest passes, they get a 50% discount. So that $15 guest fee it was this year will go to $16 next year. And then during the off season, we reduced that fee, the gate fee, by $10. So typically, last year it was $20 to get in during the off season. Now it'll be $22 going forward. But those are the only changes that were proposed and recommended by the emissions model work group over the last 3 meetings.
Yeah, a couple questions.
Yes.
I know we only have 2 months left in the year, so can you put an asterisk on all the figures where the data is not correct because of the problems of coding in the attendance?
Sure.
So that way it's very clear
Yes.
what numbers are not really legitimate numbers.
Right. Yeah, it really affects member preference, which at Shark, and it affects member preference at member pool, and that's it. So I'll make a note of that for the next month.
And then with a, explanation of why.
Sure.
And then the second question is, what was the difference between last year and this year in the tennis pickleball to go from a loss to a gain?
The major difference was we had a very successful tennis tournament, the summer solstice this past summer, that brought in a lot of revenue, with over 300 players. Plus also last year, we had to refund people for the pickleball tournament last September because of the level 2 evacuation. So then this year we actually had the tournament. So not only did we refund last year, then we also brought the revenue in this year. So it was a combination of those two that really promoted, it really drove the revenue increase this year versus last year.
Any other questions for Keith? So this leads into our next agenda item, so looking your finance.
That's section B. And so there was so I emailed out earlier this week a PowerPoint presentation and then another presentation or another packet that was viewed by the finance committee. So I'll take some time. I know there's between the admissions model work group.
Do you have any copies of that for those of us that didn't print one? The PowerPoint
Becky
presentation?
said that she put it in the packet. So in the binder.
At the end of.
Indeed, we're.
Don't, I asked her, and she said that she had included their budget material to the packet. Can certainly go make a copies.
Let's have somebody make some copies.
Or you have another.
Section D is-
It's on the screen.
I'd like one to keep going as well.
Yeah.
Sure. Gary, you're the last one that should be doing. it.
It might be faster than.
You keep saying that, but I don't want to hurt anybody else.
Becky's gonna make copies.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll start and then Becky can hand out or kind of give an introduction. So before we get into the numbers. So again, there's 4 members of the finance committee that are on the board who have seen this 3 times now. So I apologize to them for my redundancy. And then there's also 4 members of the admissions model work group that are on this committee on the board. So a lot of this information has been seen, all except Mr. Mobley. I'm doing this for you. And then we also, and I appreciate there are 2 finance committee members here in person to sit in, and there may be also online. So it was pretty, as every year we start the process in September with department heads going through and giving a forecast of how they're gonna finish the year. And then they turn into a budget to me and I review with James and Keith. And we kind of start from there. And it's always, the first blush that the finance committee reviews in October, there's usually a deficit. And it's, kind of, oh gosh, how are we gonna get there? How are we gonna make this up? What revenues, what expenses are we gonna go through and kind of cut their increase in revenues? And then through lots of discussion, and I will, I very much appreciate our finance committee. Mr. Mobley's been on it for a long time till recently, but they are very engaged and there's lots of good conversation, sharing of opinions, and that's great. So it's always, there's a difference, and having differences and coming to some sort of consensus is very much appreciated by me and by the staff. So, at the end of the day, it's our budget that we present, but it's your budget that you're going to release to the community and that we're going to try to follow going into next year. So we did yesterday, we have a vote, and the budget that you're going to see, both the operating and on the reserve side, was approved by the finance committee and recommended to the board going forward. So we'll kind of get into it. Page machine. So this is a kind of high overview of where the revenues and expenses come from. So about 59% of our revenues come from assessments. The majority of that are homeowners, regular homeowners, single family townhouses and dwellings. So that's about 98% of it. 38% of our revenues come from program revenue. Majority of that is from the recreation department. So that's about $4.7 million. And we'll get into a lot more detail in some of these categories as we kind of go through the presentation. And the rest of it's miscellaneous income, which includes the interest income and TDS and fiber fees that we're getting through, and then some late fees and fines. If you kind of look at it, we collect 8.87 million in revenue, and just kind of directly down 46% of that goes straight to the reserves. So we're funding over $4 million out of our operating budget this year into the reserves. And then 54% you can kind of shift that goes to all the other expenses. And so personnel departmental expenses are just under $10 million. And our biggest expense overall, as with many companies, is our personnel services. About $6.8 million goes to our personnel, which is, not just salaries, but burden insurance and all those kind of items. And again, talk a bit more about those as we go through. And then $3 million in material and services. The non-departmental, it's about $1 million, and the majority of that, 770,000 of it is legal and insurance. So that's a big number, and we'll talk a little bit more about legal as we kind of get through the presentation. Next. So kind of continue the high overview of it all. If you look on the left side, the operating budget, so we have about 600, and a lot of these numbers are compared to where the projections are for 2025. Not really the budget of 2025. We are forecasting have a slight surplus in 2025, somewhere between, you know, 50 and 60, $70,000 surplus, which is great. It's nice to have a surplus. It's not, you know, you don't want to have a big deficit and you don't want to have a big surplus, right? Because that means something was kind of, you know, obviously you'd rather have a big surplus, but something may have been amok with the budgeting process or the forecasting. You know, having a slight surplus kind of the good way to end the year as far as showing that there was due diligence and budgeting process worked. We're looking at increasing revenues next year by 636,000, which is about 4.4% over this current year. Total assessments, 378,000 more than they were this year. And that is, we've talked about this, a 4.5% increase in the maintenance dues. And we'll talk more about maintenance dues and the history and the increases as we get a little further on. And then program revenue up 245, and that some of that relates to what Keith was talking about recently, and there's been lots and lots of discussion for all those in this room except for Mr. Mobley about MPP pricing, RPP pricing, gate pricing, and what the appropriate levels are for those going into the, not just into next year, but more so what the strategy or what the commitment is as far as, you know, increases going forward and how those affect not only the budget, but participation and sales levels for those programs. Operating expenses, 624,000 more than were the previous years, personnel services. So this is not just, you know, rate increases. We'll talk a little bit more. There's a 3/4 position that's being proposed to be included in this budget for next year. Material services plus 142,000. Then we've had quite a bit of discussion at the finance committee on our material and services line. You know, we are an organization that doesn't have, you know, we don't travel much, we don't entertain much. There's not a lot of things that are soft in our material and service budget. You know, most of them are utilities, pool chemicals, contract services, those type of things that are either have contracts signed or things that we just have to operations, sanding cinders, those type things. Those are just, if we want to have the level of services community, those are things that we just need to buy. So there's, you know, every year we're kind of, the way our budget usually works out at the end of the year, you know, material services, we're probably a little bit over budget. And then we kind of have a little bit of savings in labor due to turnover, and it kind of balances each other out, but there's not a lot of room. And, you know, Clark kind of went through a little bit more detail, and I obviously do with James and department heads. You know, there's a lot of room to cut those items unless services are changed. And that's something that we hesitate to do. Non-departmental expenses up $70,000, and that's really related to insurance increases for this year, for going into next year. But one thing that's, you know, kind of point out, even though I'm saying that it's going to be 70,000 over what our actuals are this year, you know, one of the big reasons that we're going to have a surplus in 2025 is legal expense. We had $150,000 budgeted in that area, and we're probably going to spend about half of that this year. You know, which is great. And legal is something that's very hard to budget because you really don't know what's going to come up. So we did lower our budget for legal in 2026 based on, you know, at this point, we're not aware of any major litigation coming our way. And so that's always a variable that's kind of out of our control. And even on the way we present our financials, it's kind of below the line of other departmental expenses because it is kind of out of control of department heads. Even, you know, James, we try to mitigate and use as little legal expense as possible, but sometimes obviously it's uncontrollable going forward. So again, we do have a balanced budget that we are presenting on the operating side. Reserve budget. So capital expenditures and new capitals for 2026, we have $2.8 million in replacement items. And the biggest items, you know, $2 million of that 2.8 is either road work, asphalt work on roads and pathways, tunnel replacement, and this year is a little bit more, 614,000. We spent about 560,000 last year on the tunnel replacement. River Road is a unique tunnel change, and there's lots of complexities that are involved in with that, not just the road itself, but the soil and how soft it is and the water interacts. So there's other challenges that are involved in River Road that really aren't there for other tunnels as we go forward. And then we do have $500,000 in the budget for ladder fuel. So I know it's a big number, but those three items take up the majority of that. And as we'll get at the end of the presentation, I have a more detailed listing of the capital items. And there's some carry forward items from 2025 and 24 that we're looking to get reapproved in 2026. So it's kind of a dual motion, I guess, we're looking forward to for tomorrow. Just want to make sure everyone's clear on the items that we're looking to carry forward at this point that haven't been spent so far. Shark, 338,000. I think all of you have lived here for 15 years. The Shark assessment started in 2012. There were several options to pay that. You could have paid it up front. You could have paid in 5 annual payments, or you could pay it in 15 years, either monthly or annual. 2026 is the last year for the Shark assessment. Yay for me not having to track those anymore. Boo, we're not going to be getting that cash going into 2027. So we're not really going to have a separate fund for Shark reserve replacement. It's all going to be rolled up into the regular replacement reserves. So when we look a little bit at cash flow on the reserves, we'll talk about that. And as usual, the recreation emergency reserves, it's emergency reserve, so we're not planning to use it at all. You know, it's there, it was developed when Shark was put in, just in case for events that happened, if needed to be to fund operations. You know, I think wildfire was the main reason, and we almost used it during COVID. Nobody kind of foresaw that coming, but fortunately, the financial position of the organization, we did not need to touch that during that period. There's about 1.5 million in that account that's there, so it's a nice reserve to have.
And Joe, that account started at 1.2 million, correct?
Yeah, so I was the interest that we get, so you know, right now with interest rates, we get about $50,000 a year in interest on that, so the treasury that we just use for that, and so it just kind of keeps accruing right now.
Hey, Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt for just a minute. Richie, we got a problem.
Yes, sir. Here, like, that's.
Weird.
And please ask questions or comments as I go along. I mean, this is definitely interactive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe just to reiterate some of that, you know, we're putting right about, in this year's budget, we have $4 million.
$4 million.
Contribution to the reserve fund.
Right.
But as you can see, roads, tunnels, and ladder fuels take 2.8 million of that. 2.8 million.
Well,
No, two.
it's 2.8 total in reserves. Those three items are two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so we basically, out of the 4 million we put in, we're taking 2.8 million right back out during the year.
Right.
For those items.
So those items.
So it doesn't leave a lot of other.
And then we have 400,000 in new capital budget this year. And so.
Which is also, we made a concerted effort to keep that new capital budget low.
Right.
Yeah, that's the lowest we've had in some
years. And yeah, and so talk a little bit more about that, what we took out and what we put in to kind of reduce that as we kind of move forward with potentially having the vote on the new capital transfer fee, and how those funds could be used for new capital, and not trying to use the regular replacement funds for new capital projects. So a little deeper dive in the revenue changes. Again, owner assessments up 4.5% versus the current year, and we'll talk a little bit more in the slide just on assessments coming up, so we'll talk more about that. The non-assessment program revenue up 274,000. You know, we talked a lot about MPP and RPP and Sharkgate and the extended family, which is, you know, another program that's about $119,000 that in additional revenue for next year based on that. And we do have new revenue, and Keith mentioned one of them was the off-season pass. So we're hoping to get about $13,000 for that. But the biggest one is really the cabana rentals. And so as part of the new capital budget, we have about $60,000 allocated to build 5 cabanas at Shark. And we're going to start renting those out during the summer. We're anticipating collecting about $67,000. So it really, it's a 1-year payback for those and going forward. It's a very creative idea. Keith, Scott, and I'm not sure who all was involved. It wasn't me who thought of that idea, but it was very creative, and Susan did that. So we're always trying to find ways to have additional revenue without, just raising fees. And so that was a good additional $67,000. Other departments,
To raise that much money would be a 1.5% increase in their dues.
right, if we didn't have that, that would, make it more challenging.
Thank you, Keith and Scott.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Other departmental, Susan, we get about $300,000 in scene advertising a year, community development, raising about 230. So these are, very similar to what's in the budget this year because, we did not change any of the rates with these. So that, when Keith talks about increasing rates, these are just kind of the bigger numbers that come through us. 140,000 in storage yard, 75,000 in the administrative transfer fee. So we collect $450 for every home sale that comes through, for the time it takes accounting to go through the escrow requests, the questions from owners, did the new payments get the warranty deed? We have to turn, kind of deactivate the old membership, start a new membership database. We're outside of it. So we've instituted that a few years ago. It was 300 when we first started. And I think 3 years ago, we raised it to 450. We haven't raised that. Obviously, this is some different than what the capital transfer fee would be, but we do raise money to kind of offset the costs associated with new owners coming in. Caldera expansion, so $50,000. So we had an agreement with the resort several years ago when they started expanding the Caldera. So we get $1,250 for every plat that's recorded with the county. So these are dollars. So we had 38,000 last year. So we have additional more in 2026 coming in. But this is a finite dollars. That I'm not sure exactly how many more plats, divisions they have.
I think
maybe
they're like
2.
half to 2/3
Okay.
built, actually built out. Again, what it is, every time they record a plat, which creates the lots, we get that fee, that $1,250 per lot.
Right.
So,
At some point, that's going to stop.
Yeah.
And that'll be a loss of revenue that we've had for the last few years on the operating side.
and we have no control over when that comes in because it's
We don't.
up to them as to when they develop.
We will,
But we get the fee.
I will communicate with Thomas Samuel, who's their controller, and they'll kind of let us know towards the end when I start my budget, what they're planning on for the next year. So, they're pretty accurate with that. And then we do get $40,000 to lease the public safety building next door. We used to, at one point, we did a lot with SSD, and there's more SSD discussion later. But we rented out 2 buildings. We did services for them. We did accounting, we did payroll services. We did a lot more administrative work, and we kind of, they kind of went on their own, and we kind of stayed. And there was lots of reasons, the workload for us, and they're growing. But those were revenues that we used to have, and then we've lost over the past few years. We still do all the fleet work for the fire, the police, their vehicles, they go somewhere else, but our Nick Knighton, who's one of our great mechanics, certified in fixing fire vehicles. And so we do quite a bit of work for them, maintaining the vehicles.
We might mention too, this $40,000 land lease for the new board members. It's locked in. There's no inflationary increase. So that's not a revenue number that will go up.
Right.
It's
Stays that.
inflationary course. $40,000 a year.
Right. And we're also budgeting about $200,000 in interest income next year on the operating side. As we, everybody pays somewhat attention, I'm sure, to what the Fed does, what the stock market's doing. During COVID, interest rates were about 0. And so, we weren't making anything on our investments. And then obviously they creeped up quite a bit, and now they're creeping down. So as the Fed continues to lower rates over this year, then over the next few years, we'll be seeing those go down. Lots of discussion at the finance committee level about our investments per state statute. And our own financial policies were pretty limited, or very limited, on what we can purchase, basically treasuries. And so, we try to maximize our interest in those areas. And we've had requests over the past few months, past couple of years, about extending duration on some of our investments to kind of capture and hold some of those higher rates locked in. And I'll probably be coming back, or Clark will, to the board next month to do that again. We have some investments right now going out to 2027. We're looking maybe to go out to 2028, and just again try to lock some of these longer term investments. And really, those investments are on the capital side, the reserve side. The operating side, just due to cash flow needs, I can't really use money to invest out that long of duration. It's more 6 months, 3 months, or maybe 1 year treasuries, and most of it sits in a money market account just to do the cash flow requirements. Any questions on the revenues? Operating expenses. So total operating expenses plus 702, wage pool, so we currently have a 4.5% wage pool included in the budget. A couple of years ago, you know, when inflation was really high, thankfully it's gone down quite a bit. We, you know, kind of took a look at separating out cost of living increases versus merit. And so it wasn't there was no COLA release in October, they shut down, but we kind of used the one in August as we prepare the budget. So the 2.9%, and that's a national average, you know, the one, if you wanted to dive down deeper into numbers, you know, Pacific Northwest and Central Oregon, higher than 2.9, but that's the standard that we use. And then we have a 1.6% merit increase. And so COLA, pretty much everybody, you know, gets kind of the way it says, but the merit, that's done through, it's not guaranteed to anybody, it's done through performance, and those managers do reviews, meet with James, and then they kind of set for each employee what they're going to get next year. We have about 55 full-time equivalent employees right now. We are looking to add a compliance officer, so looking for a 3/4 time compliance officer starting on April 1st. And there was significant discussion at the finance committee level and about this position. You know, what they'd be doing, how are their metrics going to be done to establish performance and the value to the community, and what's going to be done. And so I think at the end of the day, you know, there was a very good discussion about that position. You know, as far as, you know, one of the highest items on the strategic plan was compliance and having more compliance. And so this person will be assisting not just with community development and natural resources on compliance.
And assisting natural resources, community development, but also proactively out in the community, looking at other rules that are in our rules and regulations that are not necessarily administered by community development, which they're looking at design manual, or natural resources, which they focus on a lot of ladder pure reduction, noxious weeds. And then also we have contracted with the police department for some rule enforcement, negotiating a contract with them now. We're going to talk about this at executive session today, so I don't want to dive in, but we're also looking at this person kind of filling the gap proactively that is out there today, assisting the two departments that we talked about. We're going to be moving forward with an pathway ambassador program. This person will be the staff liaison to that ambassador program. So there's a multitude of things that a 3/4 time person will be busy full doing. And what that will allow us to is, and again, we're going to talk about some of this in executive session, is to better document some of our rule enforcement that we currently have.
I would add, Ronnie had to step out for an important phone call, and she had ideas on, before we get back during the discussion, to share her concerns and ideas. But one thing to stress, that I would like to stress, coming out of the strategic plan, when we see, again, a very high emphasis on this position, but it was also a full-time position too. So we're already short of, and then we're going to also monitor the Jesus out of this to see if it's working and making a difference.
Yeah, for what it's worth, you know, natural resources and community development. I mean, you know, this past year, Jackie's not in here right now, but there were, you know, big questions about, do we do rule enforcement? I look at all of you all the time and I say our first goal is compliance and citations to be punitive. That's not our goal, is to be punitive, it's compliance. We issued 1,100 citations. So yes, we do rule enforcement. And if you look at those citations, there's this many more interactions that we have with owners where we actually get compliance without having to issue a citation. So there's a lot of work. And all of those departments, those citations, all those interactions that don't lead to citations, they are documented this deep. So that's the same thing that this position will be doing. I mean, it will be very highly detailed documented. So I'll put it this way, we get to this point next year, we'll be able to say, here's the results of this position. And then Bill, to your point, saying it was a full-time position. For budgetary purposes, I think right now we can achieve the goal through a 3/4 time position. So that's trying to, how does it fit within the budget, but also get the service that we need? And that's working with managers, saying this is what we need.
Is it gonna be difficult to hire somebody at 3/4 though? At the
Three
caliber?
quarters allows them to have benefits, and that's sometimes a very key point as far as getting somebody to work. I mean, it may be a little more challenging with 3/4, but at halftime proves to be a lot more challenging than 3/4 time for the benefit purpose.
I was actually thinking 3/4 versus full-time, but how hard is it gonna be to hire a quality person, not full-time?
I don't know exactly. I mean, because we haven't hired this before. I've hired these positions in the past, in past jobs that I've had, created code enforcement positions under a community development department, working with planning and building to take on those complaints that come in. So the planners and the building inspectors aren't doing those. It's really, those go to the code enforcement officer. That's how this would work, working with community development, natural resources. But those officers are actually proactive too. They're looking for things that aren't complaints coming in or recognized by other staff members. That said, my experience in 2 different communities doing that is 3/4 time. We had no problem hiring 3/4 time. So that, I don't know how it's going to play out now, but there was never a problem hiring 3/4 time code enforcement.
I think it'll appeal to a lot of people with families. 3/4 times allows you to send the kids off to school before you go to work instead of leaving half an hour before they leave. Those kinds of things.
And in terms of 3/4 time too, we have flexibility. It's 3/4 time total. It doesn't mean they're gonna be working 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. It could be, we need you 3 days a week. We need you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because those are the busy days in the community. And we're saying when we get to the summer, is part of this job description, part of the expectation is, we get to summer, you may be working Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because those are the busy times in the community. So it's 3/4 time, but we have the ability to adjust the schedule, which is attractive as well.
We'll find out.
Yeah,
So Ronnie, did you have additional thoughts you wanted to share about that?
Talking about compliance officer.
Oh,
yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think so, yes, I think that, I guess what's unclear to me and a little bit nebulous is to me, it's almost like finding a unicorn. So, it's someone that's going to not be working full-time, that's going to be working a different schedule. Part of, I don't know if Jane shared this, but part of the year,
Yeah.
so finding someone that's okay with that. But really what I'm unclear about is measuring the performance of this individual. It's going to be a little bit nebulous that, how successful they are with the investment that we're going to be making. And sort of finding a jack of all trades, right? So right now, staff in public works and natural resources and community development are handling this work right now. And so somehow someone's going to have to come in and be sort of a jack of all trades and have an understanding of the regulations and the rules and policies and all 3 of those, and then the handoffs between those departments and this person. So I think it's a lot to ask of one person. And beyond that, I have consternation over hiring that person this year, given the other budget constraints and priorities. But yeah, so those were my concerns about individual. Thank you, Bill.
So, Kelly, from HR, the unicorn, can hire what challenges does that present to you? What are the positives or?
Wondering if unicorns exist.
You need to speak a little louder for the
Sure.
recording to catch it.
So many positions within SROA are very unique. So I see your concerns, definitely, Ronnie. But it's not really all that different in some of our other positions. For instance, at some point in time, we're going to be needing to replace Susan, who herself has also become rather rare
Unicorn.
in her line of work. So it's not a challenge that SROA has not faced in the past, nor are we not going to face it again in the future. So it's something that we just have to buckle down and find the right person for. We are fortunate, timing wise, I think hiring, we're fortunate because there are people out there who are looking for work. So the current economy, people are looking right now, right? So we've been in times when people have not been responding to our job ads, but that's not what we're seeing right now. Again, whether or not those are people who are qualified to do the work, that's another thing. How many of those applicants are really qualified? So we have a solid applicant pool. Anytime we put out a requisition, we're just gonna have to see what happens. So it could be, we have a very, SRO's attitude has always been that it has to be the right person for the job and the right job for the person. And if that match isn't made, then we need to take a step back rather than making a mismatch in hiring. So I think, although to Ronnie's concerns, yes, it is a big job and a big ask for somebody. It's a lot to get to know, but we have also seen people step into roles where they have to get to know those rules and regulations, whether it's in natural resources or whether it's in community development, and come up to speed on them very quickly. And we've seen that happen. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to find something. I don't think it's too much. And then as far as scheduling goes, that's something that we're just gonna have to talk about and see what's gonna fit. I feel like that could be a bit of a challenge. But the thinking, we're gonna have to put it out there and see what we can find. And luckily, the board's made sure that we have an excellent benefit package, and that really does draw people in, especially if it's a full-time employee. However, we need to make sure that the wage is high enough that it's also going to be attracting somebody as well, because we are this kind of unique unicorn ourselves out here in this little island of Sun River. So in order to be able to bring in a quality candidate, we need to make sure that we're able to have that wage available for them too. So is it doable? I think it is doable. It just might take a little.
I'm gonna address this a little bit too, is, I'm not gonna pat myself on the back, I'll give you my experience in terms of creating this position and creating a code enforcement program. First, when I worked for the city of Bend, I wrote their code enforcement manual for them. And then brought a position from the police department directly into our department to work with the planners and the building staff to do the enforcement of violations of zoning code, building code, that the planners who were busy reviewing applications, writing decisions for folks for new development, did not have the time to go out in the field and look at every violation. Code enforcement officer, for example, would work with the planner if they had questions on rules, rule interpretation, and for that clarity. And that, you know, we had people that had a base knowledge of how to enforce rules and how rules are written, but the specificity is how they worked with that staff. And that's how I envision it here, would be working with our community development staff and with our natural resources staff, and as well as those rules that really are in no man's land right now. And so in terms of organization, that's how it would work. And we're gonna have this position in the administration department, so it would be working directly with me and Keith. I let him know that yesterday. But Keith has been working with community development a lot on these issues. So and then in terms of documentation, we already have those in place with community development and natural resources. So we have a lot of it established. And lastly, there are folks out there that this is what they do. So if you have a background in rule enforcement, so if you were a building plans examiner or inspector, or actually if you were a land use planner, they're very transferable skills. You could come in, you know how to read the code, you know how to interpret it, you know how to apply it. And so that is how this is gonna play out. And so, you know, if you approve this position over the next, say, 2 to 3 months before we would advertise, we will have all that dialed in. We will finalize the job description, kind of a draft job description, and put it into play. But again, because it's a new position, the pressure's on us to come back to you next year and say, here's how it worked out.
Okay, Dale, Brad, I don't see hands up. Did you guys have any final comments on this piece of it?
I was curious, James, who this individual will be reporting to.
But they would be reporting to me and Keith. It would be under administration. So and the reason why it's under administration is because they'd be working with the other departments. So it's not necessarily under natural resources or community development. It would be under administration.
Okay, thank you.
So you can, this time next year, I'm on the hook. I'm accepting being on the hook.
Okay, Dale, did you have anything?
Muted.
Okay, hey, Joe, why don't we move along?
Yeah. We can do that. I knew that was an important thing, so I'm glad that we've had a lot of conversations at the finance committee level, so I'm glad that we had the opportunity to go with a little more detail here. Burden, looking at about 35.8% burden rate. We have the same health insurance coverage that we had last year is an 8.8% increase, which is about standard of what they have been going forward. As James mentioned, we do have a very generous benefit package. But one of the things that obviously does happen is the way our health insurance works is that SROA pays for 100% of the employees' premium. And then all the dependent care, they pay about 70% of that, which is generous and very much appreciated. But the other 30%, as rates go up, the amount of the employee contributes obviously goes up also. And there, you know, if you have a family, that's about a 15% increase of what you paid this year to what you're going to pay next year. So as we talk about, you know, total wage pool and the increase that we're giving to or potentially given to employees, you know, 2.9% of that is, you know, just cost of living. And then the merit, you know, some of that merit increase or a lot of that merit increase could be eaten up by the increase for the dependents on your plan. So just throwing that out there. Workers' comp, the mod factor. So the mod factor is basically how you compare to other organizations in your industry basically, and we're at 0.94. It was at 0.9. We've been down in the 0.7s before, and basically the way it works, if you're at a 0.9, you get a 10% discount on your workers' comp rates compared to everybody else. If you're at 1.1, you pay 10% premium. And so the lower that we can get that, the more savings that we have. We have a very robust safety program, a safety committee that meets every month, and we value safety here tremendously, and so it's very much appreciated as we go forward with that. Other expense increases, you know, utilities, and we talk about things that are uncontrollable. Mid-State's going up 16% next year. That's just something that we don't have control over. GIS licensing, one of the big investments that we've made over the past several years. And I know Gary gives a little bit his spiel on his update with his task force after me, I believe. And so GIS and the investments that we have to that to make our employees that are out in the field much more efficient, and the back end of that way more efficient, we needed additional licensing for that. And it's gonna be, you know, money well spent, but it's an increase to our budgets. We are having an on-site reserve study next year, so that every 3 years, that's about $13,000. But again, the value of that, having an independent person come out and look at every asset that's on a reserve study, resetting timelines and resetting our percent funded is very, very valuable. And other, you know, seeing postage going up, that's just things that just go up year to year. So. Any questions on the operating expenses?
Just I guess as we go into talking about the hybrid environment and any equipment that has to go into that or licensing that goes into that, that's not included.
Next page, owner assessments, and so there's a little bit more, talking about assessments, and we've talked quite a bit about the owner's assessment, and Clark has an article coming in the scene this month that talks quite a bit about, assessments, so, again, 4.5%, is in the budget for this year. If you kind of take the average, two averages, if you take average excluding COVID years, which we had a 6% increase for those 2 years, it's 3.65. If you include that, it's about 3.9%. Kind of looking at that graph, you can see in between 2012 and 2016, there was 4.5% was the average, and then we had a zero, right? And in 2018, we did not have any increase in our maintenance dues. Hindsight, looking at the compounding effect of maintenance dues, I'm a big fan, I guess, of, I'd rather having small incremental increases on an annual basis and then not having, kind of a jump going forward. But again, the things that are looking at the economy right now, the inflation that we've had over the past few years, the investments in the operating that we've done, the finance committee overall felt that 4.5% was a fair amount. A little more detail about the resort and commercial. So both the resort, and I think there may have been some this by myself, the resort agreement had a max of 4%, and so did the village. I think I said before 4.5, but it's not. It's 4%, just like the resort.
Negotiated that the year before.
We negotiated that year before. And so with those two entities, obviously, and you can see the graph on the right with the resort commercial assessments and how it was going up. And we've talked about the formula that we use with them. It's based on the real market value attributed by the county to their properties, divided by the total value of Sun River, multiplied by our budget. That's kind of the simple way to say it. You can see at some points it was going up kind of nicely, and then the county, for whatever reason, basically stopped adjusting the real market value on commercial and resorts properties. So as their value stayed the same, and if we're looking at, 2018, 19, 20, 21, we all know how much the value of property went up in Sun River of your individual home. So the total value of Sun River went way up and theirs stayed the same. So when you do the math, their dues went down, right? And so that became, and thus the negotiations and the board agreement to have a consistent basis of how to predict and how to account for those increases. So, but something, so the resort is one big entity, the village is another big entity, but then there's some one-offs that we have here, and they're still on that program. And so the Sun River Fitness and Aquatics Center,
The old Mavericks.
Old Mavericks, Benjamin Klappa, those who've been on the board for a long time, familiar with that property. Their real market value in 2025 went down, right? So it went down $600,000. So, I believe Mr. Clapper went to the county and lobbied, whatever. Told us that he was going there and lobby. So theirs went down by $600,000. And so when I do the math for their assessments this year, they're paying less. So again, that formula that is based on really nothing. The county doesn't use real market value for anything. You don't pay, your taxes are paid on the assessed value of your property. Nothing to do with real market value. And so, at some point, negotiating at individual basis with some of them, specifically that property, it's probably challenging as far as getting them to agree on something different. So, just a bigger thing down the line is how those individual properties are calculated. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, another way to say it is the formula that is in place and was
Updated.
Was based upon a third-party factor that we had no control over, the real market value by the county tax assessor, that they don't use for any reason. Because as Joe said, when you look at your tax bill, it's the assessed value that they calculate the tax on. So they had no incentive to really calculate that.
They didn't care whether it's accurate or not. They didn't use the number.
Correct.
They told us to stop using the number, but it's in the consolidated plan.
Right.
Exactly. So our formula going way back to when it was put into place was based upon the third party that they don't have any incentive to adjust it. So it really impacted what you see on the graph.
And I think it's, you know, we kind of talk, it's a make you feel good about your house value, and when you get your tax bill,
Your
it's like, wow, you
property's
see,
worth this much, but
we're only gonna
taxing
charge you this
you
much on your property taxes, so.
So you're saying it's in the consolidated
Yes, the
plan?
formula.
There isn't an agreement around this or a term around
No.
this for renegotiation?
Well, that's what
So
the-
basically, the way it reads it in the consolidated plan is to use this formula or mutually agreed
Mutually
upon.
agreeable.
And so that's how we got agreements done with the village and the resort. And so there's 5 or 6 or 7 other one-offs, you know,
Country store.
country store, the bank, fitness and aquatics, who are still on this formula. We could kind of go to them and individually.
I mean,
and try to give
they're a
it
lot smaller.
But they're a lot smaller fees, that the amounts aren't as significant. But when something like, you know, it goes down, you know, it was $2 million was the RMV on that property, and it went down to 1.4. That's a significant change in the RMV for that property, which affected how much they're gonna pay in dues next year.
And, you know, just going back for those of you on the board that weren't on the board when we were doing these negotiations, the question came up, why don't you just change the consolidated plan to get rid of the formula? Well, that takes an owner's vote. And the question was, okay, well, you know, I had a conversation, with resort management. You know, we want you to enter into this agreement. And at that point it was, well, we'll just have a vote. We'll just amend the consolidated plan. We can charge you whatever we charge all the other owners. There's a provision in your, you'll hear about this later today, exactly what you already heard, that prevents any changes to the consolidated plan. We were not able to have a vote to change that provision. That
Without their
formula
approval.
stays in there. So the alternative was sit down, negotiate, enter into an agreement. And what they would do based upon these averages, they said, okay, we'll pay whatever you decide for all the other owners, like you're making this decision today or tomorrow. But we want to cap at 4%. And the reason why they capped at 4% was the average had been around 3.5%, so they want to have percent higher. Other than that, they were going to walk away from the table. So that's how we got.
That's how we ended up where we're at.
And how long did it take you to get to that point?
With
the village, over a year.
The village was pretty,
6 months. With the resort, it was a year and a half.
yeah, yes, meet lots of,
I
you know,
remember it was a long.
Tom O'Shea and their controller.
But again, you know, not count. It's weird. If the assessor, taking it one step further, just so you understand, because I know it's important to the community. If the assessor doesn't adjust the real market value, what happens is you will see their assessed value go down like you see here. With a guaranteed increase per the agreement, it will go up. But every now and then, the assessor will adjust the real market value. All of a sudden, they have to pay more. Then they won't adjust it for a while and it'll start to go back down again. So you may get these axes that cross over a period of years. But at the end of the day, for budgeting.
It gives us a lot more consistency and
And
knowing, yeah,
predictability.
last year, you know, go figure, they did adjust their arm, they hadn't adjusted it in 4 or 5 years, and then last year they did adjust it.
It was like 7 or 8 years, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they hadn't, and so it would have jumped quite a bit, but then again, this year now it started coming down, and so,
They didn't adjust.
you know, I think in the long run, this is a good way, we'll see how, it's a 5-year agreement.
Yeah.
We'll see how it works out, but this at least gives us consistency of knowing what they're going to pay on an annual basis for the big entities, for the village and the resort. Any other questions on assessments? Then the last slide of this, and then a couple of capital things. Just this is more of a cash flow look forward. And so you can see the 3 different accounts that we have. The capital account, we're looking to finish the year about 13.5 million. Hopefully we'll get about $500,000 in interest income. As we talked about, the operating budget is going to contribute $4 million to the reserve budget. There's some fixed assets that are in CIP, construction in progress, in the year that we'll kind of put into service in the first half of 26. And then the expenditures in 2026, which includes the carry forward, which we'll discuss in a minute. So we're looking to end basically the reserve and capital budget account pretty much where we started at the end of next year. We typically underspend a little bit, so I anticipate this being a very conservative number, but that's kind of what we're looking at. The shark one is kind of what, talk a little bit, and again, we talked about, there's about 60,000 in that account right now. There's about $250,000 should come in 2026 for the remaining assessments that people owe. And then we're gonna pass some expenditures, and I have a negative number in there, that's just kind of for, the visualization. So when there's a negative number in there, it has to come out of the regular replacement reserves, so that negative 150,000, if that's what it is, will come out of the regular replacement reserves to get that to zero. And then lastly, we talked about the recreation reserves. We just purchased yesterday a $1.5 million 1-year treasury at 3.7%. So only about $55,000 in interest on that one. So that just kind of rolls over and keeps growing that account. And then I guess, Reggie, can you go to the other page, other sheet? And so one of the items that the board, the finance committee talked quite a bit about is the regular replacement schedule. And so there are 2 pages to this. Either. Yeah, that guy right there. And so this is a full listing of the regular replacements going into 2026. And so the top page, we kind of talked about the major items in this, and those are the ladder fuel, the asphalts, and the tunnels going forward. But this is a full list, and what we had a discussion yesterday, Corey, if you're online listening or not, this has been through several iterations with mainly Mark Smith and his staff, Sam and with the fleet, but also with Gary and with Keith and Scott, our recreation. So this list was much longer when we looked at it in September, and so there's hundreds of thousands of dollars of items that were pushed back. There was 2 loaders on this for $250,000. We don't replace them unless we need to, specifically vehicles. We have to do a very good job. They do a very good job. I don't do anything, but that's important, of maintaining our vehicles and maintaining our assets. And so whatever, the established lifespan is for an asset, invariably, things break and things happen along the way that are out of control. But I would say typically they last longer than they are in the reserve schedule for, which helps for numerous reasons. You keep the cash in the account, you earn more interest, those payments come later, and it helps our percent funded. So there's $3.1 million in the reserve replacement schedule for next year. The new capital, right there, perfect. Those is a list. So this was different at one point. So at one point there was $270,000 in this new capital budget for a event building, new event office. If those of you have been over to Shark, which I'm sure you all have, that member services office, it houses lots of folks in there. It's very cramped, just to put it bluntly. And one of the things that we had wanted to do was to kind of create an event space office, the way that there's 2 members in our event team. And when people come in or they're communicating to each other, there's cross traffic of member services, there's cross traffic of Sammy who does inventory. There's a lot of going on. So it's hard for them to greet folks, talk amongst themselves. So it's something that we had in the budget originally. But one of the things that we're going to do, at least for next year, and see how it works, is that window is on the left side of the door. So when people come in and talk about renewing their RPPs and MPPs, well, we're going to move that window to the right side of the door. And Sean, who's the main member service staff person, will be sitting there. And then Beth, who's kind of sitting right now to the right side of that door, she'll move over kind of next to Ashley. And so hopefully that will improve the flow of that area a lot. And so kind of reduce some of that cross traffic. And we're going to be able to do that for $18,000 versus build a new building. So, kudos to, Keith and the team and Jake for being a little bit more creative of how we can, spend a lot less and hopefully mitigate some of those difficulties in that area. Couple of the big things, pickleball shade. So any of you who are pickleball players up at Pickleball Hill, that middle section is just getting beat down by the sun. So folks who are there in the summertime, that's just an issue. So creating shade structures in that area is very important to be that amenity.
On that note, we had initial bid was about $20,000 higher than what that number in there is, and so we had a competitive bid, and we're able to bring that cost down as well. So when we look at those projects, we always try to look at multiple bids to make sure that we're getting the best benefit for the construction.
And the structures will be similar to the big shade structures at Shark.
Right.
And number
These will be permanent.
they're very expensive to install.
And the last thing, you know, kind of want to mention is the cabanas, obviously, we talked a little bit about that, but having those in the budget, so those will start creating revenue for us. So 407,000 in new capital for next year. And then the next page, so every year, we kind of, as we kind of each year refine our capital budgeting process, this is a list of items from both 2024, 2025 that have not started and the money has not been spent yet. And so we are coming back to the board, basically looking for reapproval of these items. One item did change. The cafe redesign was in last year's 2025 budget at $150,000. And so as we get closer to actually doing the projects and getting the bids, it's looking like it's gonna be just over $200,000. So that number has changed going forward. So if there are any questions, Keith can answer that. Sure. But one of the things that we are doing as it affects the operating budget, we're increasing the percentage that we're getting back from the purveyor in that space from 18 to 23 or 24%. Most hopefully 24. And so that will increase the revenues on our operating side going forward. And it's just those who have been there in the summertime, you know, the people standing in line to get food or drinks, people are walking through into the entrance, they're cutting through the line. It's just very inefficient how it's done. So this should not only improve the experience for the guests, but it also should improve the efficiency for the cafe and create more revenues. So looking for $727,000 basically dollars of carryover from those 2 years we spent 2026.
Joe, were there items on the 2025 list that are not being carried over, that's being dropped?
There were a few, and off the top of my head, there are like 4 or 5 that just, you know, just basically, we don't need some of them had to do with trail signs. With our new signs that we've had out there, with ADA, and so those are just basically removed from the reserve study altogether.
Yeah.
So there are some of those items.
And Keith, it does say move the window, so I'm assuming for the member services, I'm assuming that means you'll get rid of the window on the left
So
side?
the window on the left side will actually become a fixed window.
Oh,
So
okay.
this will have light emission
Okay.
with a roller shade.
Okay.
And then the other window will become the same window it is now, the operating window. Yes.
I think it's helpful this year having 4 board members on the admissions model work group as well as finance, so people are kind of in the loop more.
Yeah, you know, I know a lot of it probably has been heard quite a bit more, but I think you know, the more you hear it, the more you go through it, the more comfort I think everyone gets as far as what's in the budget.
We have some subject matter experts from finance committee, Mike, Steven, and John. Do you guys have any comments on process or what the recommendation is?
We might mention first as an overall for the finance committee is they spend a lot of time going over these, asking tough questions and helping work it down to this point. And I've commented, you know, really appreciate all the hours that the community members, you know, have spent besides the board members on that committee. That, you know, that they've put a lot of eyes to this. And I appreciate that.
So subject matter experts out there, any comments on process or where we are with the recommendation?
With our strong leadership, there's no.
We're pretty thorough.
Yeah.
You're trying to get a bottle of wine?
I think a lot of questions got answered, you know, a lot of answers were given, and I think we had a lot of back and forth and, you know, concessions made or not. It was good.
Well, I appreciate it and appreciate you guys showing up too. It's good for the
We
board to
looked
see.
very carefully, have spent a lot of time talking about that 4.5% increase. Cause you know, a 4% increase would have been ideal, but basically that 0.5% is the compliance officer.
Yep.
So the question becomes, if we want a compliance officer, we had to have a 4.5% increase. We weren't willing to give that compliance officer up, we could have done it at 4. Because we felt it was very important as both a part of the strategic plan and a number of owner comments over the last several years about, are you enforcing our rules? You know, or is it just when we complain that you start to enforce a rule?
Okay, so this will be a board action. item?
Yeah, board action item tomorrow, for the maintenance fees and for this budget and, Sky Park, that's it.
James?
I just I want to thank the board and thank the finance committee for going through this, understanding this, asking good questions, keeping the staff on their toes, but also, you know, all the department heads and staff that have to, you know, work to put this together in the first place on the red line. You know, they try to take, and being very conscious of not spending money. If we don't need to spend money, it's not our money, it's your money. And then most importantly, thank Joe, because I walk into Joe's office, and there's two screens there and they have spreadsheets and you know, so
The staff.
Joe, thank you.
No, thanks all the department heads, that's okay. Thanks.
Okay, before the next,
Just one thing, my biggest concern is, first of all, thank you, you guys did do an outstanding job. It all, you know, balances out, but having done a lot of budgets in my life, I usually have a little bit of a, I won't call it a slush fund, but a rainy day fund over onto the side. And I don't see any of that. And, as owners come forward and ask for new things, et cetera, they don't understand how detailed of a budget process it is and how laser focused we are on making sure we get to zero. In terms of we don't overspend. And so, you know, you have these comments that come to us that say, oh, it's only $500 to get this. We don't have it, because we balanced everything down to the penny. Although pennies aren't allowed anymore, I guess. But that's my one concern is there's no rainy day for those things that come up.
We do it a little, there, in one way we do, and that's salaries and positions. We know we're gonna have turnover. We have turnover every year, even if we don't want turnover, it happens. And that's where we end up having some give and take, particularly when other expenses go above budget, is that we end up saving salary and burden when we have turnover. And that's what allows us, you know, on summer, they expect some turnover, they build that in and reduce the salary numbers and this and that. But on our full staff, we pretty much budget for them being there all year. So that's our give and take. And then we try to be conservative on the interest income, that we're just maybe a little below what we're earning. So there's a little income there. And then it just depends. Some things go over budget and some things go under budget. As you know, in any kind of a $14 million budget.
Right. Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is I get that but for new things that come up that seem like a really good idea to do, it's gonna be another year, or two.
You know, or again, sometimes you think of budget or like a slush fund is taking care of problems when they come up. But I also look at it as, you know, we need to take care of, you know, address and take advantage of opportunities that come up too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, that's available. It's a great deal. We need it. Maybe we need to spend money. I mean, we can always come back to the finance committee and to the board for a budget adjustment. And then it's up to us to figure out where those dollars are gonna come from. Sometimes you're 100%. I mean, on personnel savings, we know it's going to happen. It's like this year, we're gonna end up with a surplus. A lot of it due to personnel. Those would have been dollars that would have been available, take advantage of something. We didn't have anything.
Well, like this room here.
Yeah.
When we were carpeting
Yeah,
the police and fire area, this room was not budgeted for new carpet. And something else wasn't. And we decided it would be cheaper in the long run to move that up 2 years and do the work all at once. So when they're moving all that desks out because of the wall reconstruction, they also replace the carpet on this side of the administration room, rather than next year or the year after, when we would have replaced that carpet, having to move all those desks again.
Yeah,
And
I get,
and the savings on the price. So there is some room for some of that, but for new capital items, there isn't.
yeah, so I get all that. I'm just saying, we had, I don't feel comfortable having to count on something like that. I mean, if it doesn't happen, you can't count on it. What if everybody stays in their job and everybody's really happy and
And
it
you wait
doesn't-
to hear.
Yeah.
You wait to hear.
I'm just pointing out that, it is. Kudos that you've got it laser focused and dialed in. That's fantastic and it's perfect budgeting process. But it makes me nervous because there's not at least a small fund off to the side that could be used if opportunities arise. So,
In my experience, we never had a slush fund for OpEx. But we did have, you know, some embedded in each capital request. There was a 10%, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it's a contingency.
Contingency,
Yeah,
basically,
right.
yeah. So my experience is we never had an operating expense because everyone was trying to meet tough margins and
yeah,
and guidelines, so nobody had any, and they relied on exactly what Clark was saying, sort of, you know, the staff attrition. And you know, other sundry items that might change through the year, so really it's on the capital side that we would have a contingency for each of those very large capital projects.
And we do.
Okay, so let's,
We do.
unless there's something new, let's move on because we have 11 o'clock with legal.
11 o'clock legal.
Okay, so
So,
I think jam for time.
These should get pretty quick.
So next up is Gary Seifert with the IT task force update.
Awesome, this will be brief. First of all, thank the board for approving the assembly of the IT task force again this year. We've met now multiple times. We've come together with a mix of previous members of the task force. We got some new blood in the task force. We've got board members. We've got subject matter experts, owners in the community. So I think it's a good grouping. We've kind of split up into 4 groups. Again, subject matter experts kind of in their own field and track. Infrastructure that handles kind of cloud. We've got security. We've got GIS, since it's such a big focus across basically the environment here. And then just an overall generic application work group. We have taken all of the feedback from the different department heads at SROA, and we've rolled those into actionable items for each group to kind of roll into this 3-year roadmap. And we've got a target of December 3rd for the first draft. And we anticipate with hope by the January board meeting to be able to present our findings, potentially pushing that into February, but we're targeting January at this point. And next task force meeting is the 19th. Any questions? Appreciate it.
Thank you. Fast.
Okay. Next is rules and regulations task force update. James for
Yep. Rule and Regulation Task Force began meeting in September. That was meeting 1. We just had our 3rd meeting this past Wednesday, our November meeting. Where we're at, first meeting was kind of more organizational. The second meeting, what we did was created 4 subgroups. Those subgroups then have a leader and they have 4 or 5 participants. And what they've done is those subgroups, kind of like what Gary was saying, they're looking at the existing rules and regulations. They're looking at it, we're going to change the format of that document. But they broke that rule document and the rules within our rule document. They kind of corresponded it to the 4 guiding principles that are on our strategic plan: natural environment, safety, and so on. So it corresponds. And those subgroups have met individually. Well, 3 of them have. One we had a participant on Covenants Committee that moved. So, and what they did is they took their sections of the rules and regulations and they evaluated those and said, okay, this makes sense. We no change. This one, maybe a couple words need to be changed, and this one needs to be completely rewritten. And 2 of those subgroups presented their findings, so to speak, and their recommendations to the full task force this past week. And that's similar to what we did with the strategic plan process. And then the full task force is able to weigh in on what is presented from that subgroup. So what you're getting is an efficiency of work, because the subgroup, it's easier with a few people than it is with the whole task force going page by page. And then they're able to come back and get the input of the full task force. So the next meeting is December 9th. It will be the other two subgroups presenting their proposed changes and amendments to the document. After that point, what will happen is, and with that input, is I, James, will take all of their suggestions and I will create one kind of working draft in a logical format set out in a codified version. Section one, you know, A, like you're typically, you read rules. And then when that is created, probably available in January, the full task force will look at that. They'll say, okay, you know, we need to make some additional changes. So it's probably the end of like February. I'm hoping February, they will have a draft that they're ready to recommend to the Covenants Committee. And if you remember, the Covenants Committee is the Rules Committee. So it's kind of three layers. They'll make a recommendation to the Covenants Committee. Covenants Committee will do their overview, make a recommendation for a draft, a final draft to go to the board for review and approval. Key to this, though, what we did right after meeting one is we sent out notice to the owners and said, we have a task force, we're inviting comment, and there were a number of comments that came in. Some of them, the task force noted made perfect sense, and they considered those when they were making their recommended changes. And that will occur again. Typically, when we get done with the task force and it goes to the Covenants Committee, we'll work with Sunriver U to have a virtual forum like we've done in the past. That document will be put out for owners to comment on, and we'll do the same thing before and when we get to the board. So that's projecting it out.
Is it possible, I know it's not an easy task, to make sure that those changes are red line changes? You saw which words or sentences are being changed. If a whole section's being deleted, show that whole section being deleted and then parentheses say that's being incorporated in this new section over here. But that way, one document shows the old and the new all in one.
Maybe. For some
Really
sections.
fun.
Yeah,
It
it's-
is. I know.
So we're totally, I think you're being optimistic about the timeline a little bit.
I think it comes
I'm
to the
just being,
board. maybe
I'd rather have it take a few months longer and do
Yeah.
it right. And this is a major rewrite. So it's gonna be very hard to compare old versus new in some areas.
See, and that's the key, is that it's not, we're getting rid of that language and adding this language. Some of it is complete rewrite. And so if I can do that to the greatest degree possible, some of it though, it will take a side-by-side comparison. And some of there's just no other way to do it than that. So I'm very appreciative, would love to do it that way. It doesn't work in all instances, so.
Yeah, what you can do is just take the original document, take your new document and do a compare. It's gonna be a mess, but you could do that and it'll show you the red line.
And that's what one of the subgroups already did when they did their presentation, did that comparison.
Yeah,
And sometimes when you have drastically different documents, what's easy to do is to have a separate sheet that says, okay, for trash violation, it did say this, now it says this. So that you are able to have an overview of what the kind of the policy, the underlying change was. And then you can look at the actual old language and new language, but it's really condensed, you know, noise hours are no construction noise between 7 PM and 7:30 AM. If they wanted to change it to 8:30 AM, rather than you looking at the document, I can just put that in a summary that says, here's a significant change in the rule. So I'll try to put that together as well. Yeah, sometimes it's, as I say, to wrap this up, I said it at the first meeting, second meeting, and the other night this is kind of the sausage making part of the process. And when we put it all together, that's putting it into the casing, and it looks beautiful. And I said it with the pathway task force report and strategic plan. And on the back end, we come out with good documents. So that's the big. You know, I think at the end, and then I'll be done, is for the community, they can look at the existing rule, but it's really read the new draft, the new proposal. Are you in agreement with what that rule is? That's, I think, the key. So that's it. That's where we're at. Next meeting is December 9th. We'll go over the other two subjects.
Okay, next is, James, once again, section F in your binder, Meadow House easement update.
The easement, I'm not gonna go into, depth. There's lots of legal language in an easement, but essentially this is for the pathway from circle 2 to 3, the alignment that crosses the Meadow House condominium process. And that is essentially toward circle 3. That is from the golf course, the resort's property line where their maintenance shed is, to circle 3. And we've done survey, we've laid out the alignment. Those owners have been able to see that alignment. They're okay with the alignment, as it's been proposed. So this easement then gives us the ability, when the board approves going forward to construct that project, we can construct the pathway in that alignment and within that easement area. Some provisions, related to this is, we worked with them so that it is no dollars out of pocket to obtain this easement, which is key. We're not writing any checks for permission. Most people, when you want an easement on their property, they're going to ask you for some dollars. What we did on the back end is we came to, through negotiations, some agreement with them. There's right by, on the River Road side on Circle 3, there was a short stub path that came out to River Road right there that really didn't go anywhere. It was put in years ago. So essentially folks from Meadow House can cross the street and get on the pathway. That's causing a huge problem for them because what's happening, because there is no path, folks are crossing the street and going through their driveway. And there have been people that have almost been hit, et cetera, et cetera. So we agreed to take that short little stub out. If it was set up for them and they don't want it, and a new path is going to supplant that, so be it. And it's actually already been taken out. Also, on the west side of the property, is a pathway section that really just serves them, that goes to primary pathway along the golf course, there, our pathway. That causes them the same problem. It brings people up into their property. People come in and cut through their property, when it was really intended just for the owners of those condominium units. So we agreed to take that out as well. And with the new pathway, it will get rid of the need for this. The other thing is we agreed to specific design. So it's going to be the same width as our pathways as you see. We will have a berm, 4-foot berm, kind of meanders along the Meadow House, their condominium side of the pathway. And then a short little fence. It's the fences that you see everywhere. It's a post with just one rail on the top. And then we will landscape that like we do everywhere else where we do berms. And that's something we would have probably done anyway. So again, those were the 3 primary components that we agreed to provide to them in exchange for the permission to construct the pathway at no cost, no out-of-pocket dollars. And so if you approve this tomorrow, what will happen is we will then record this with the Deschutes County Clerk, and it will be in place in perpetuity.
So question, 3 questions, actually.
Okay.
We don't have the easements agreements done with the other 2 parties, is that?
That's where I was going to jump next.
Okay, and so I'll hold that question.
Yes.
Secondly, you did say that we've already taken off the stub, the asphalt stub. Because there was a date, there's a date in here prior to December 1st, and so my question was, could we get that done in time?
We're done.
Sounds like.
That's
we're
why we
done.
agreed to December 1st. Such a
Okay.
quick timeline.
And was it within budget?
It's essentially, our staff goes out there with a small, track
down.
and they tear it out.
Yeah.
We got it. Yep.
I'd ask. Secondly, I noticed that we're gonna put a flashing stop sign because of the traffic concern that's there. And that's great, but then the indemnification, there's no cap on this indemnification, it's pretty wide open.
Okay.
So my question is there a reason why there's no cap on this thing?
Well, there's no cap either way. good question. All I can say, we ran it through our legal department as well. They didn't ask this question of us. Where you suggested you want a cap in the,
Well, it's wide open, so,
Okay.
it's just an area of a contract that
yeah,
to go into negotiation where you're trying to protect yourself. And since people tend to like to come after the owners association, that's why I was asking if there was a cap, so. I don't know, Keith, you could weigh in here faster than I can. You understand this part of the line.
It does make sense, if it can be, but yeah, a limit, beyond which we've agreed we will not go.
Yeah, just tells you, it gives you an idea of how far you could be exposed versus unlimited. That was my question.
okay, that, I'm just thinking procedurally, their board met last Saturday and they approved this easement. They meet, I think it's every 3 months, 2 to 3 months, quarterly or every other month. So they would have to approve the amendment to this, and I would just have to bring it back to the board after they say, okay. It's not a big time crunch right now because we're not proposing to build the pathway section, so I can do that.
What do you think, Keith? Should we go back on this, or do you feel like the risk is low enough?
I think the risk is relatively low. In general, I was impressed with the quality of the work on this document. It's really thorough, well done. But there is that.
Yeah, I'll defer to you. If you feel like the risk is low, then I'll back off. It's just that when I see that language and it's wide open, it makes me
It's a
nervous.
comfort factor.
Yeah.
But it also might be an issue with them where they didn't improve to account.
Yeah.
I
Cuts both ways.
well, it's an action item tomorrow. So, you can think about it, give me direction tomorrow. We'll get to this item on the agenda.
Do you have the ability to contact them today, at least somebody from there, to find out if they'd have a problem with the?
I can try, but it's gonna go back to their full board.
Well, I get that, but if you
So-
get some idea, are we gonna be raising a can of worms by
Actually,
doing it, or?
it's gonna go to their attorneys and then it's.
Yeah,
Here's what happened today.
okay.
Okay.
Their board chair is a lawyer that does these things. So it was pretty.
So they're gonna
efficient.
be happy with this language. I know that.
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out if we are happy with this, and if Keith feels the risk is low and our attorneys feel the risk is low, then I'll drop the concern. In the future, as we negotiate these, I think it is a good idea to try to get a cap on that.
Okay. And again, I mean, you can give me direction tomorrow, and if it pushes it off for a few months, we're not building the pathway section this next year, so we have time. So which takes me into the other two groups, which is, I'm sorry.
One further question on this one.
Yeah.
You're talking about putting in the berms. Are the berms gonna be within the red lined area that we're getting the easement, or the berm's gonna be on their property?
It's gonna be within the easement area.
So they're gonna be in this easement area.
Correct.
The red line.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure.
On the blinking light, is that just blinking all the time or is it active?
It's blinking all the time.
Huh.
It's kind of, when.
Well, we have one at the village,
Yeah.
yeah, small circle, it's not blinking, you push the button.
Yeah. But it's, yeah, which nobody pushes. The reason is where the pathway crosses right now, there's that really sharp turn and people don't see people. Right now, it's that stub, so people are crossing at that stub, that's the danger. What we're going to be doing is when we bring the pathway across their property, there will be an at-grade crossing. That will be the regular pathway that folks are, that they need to cross River Road right there. Right now, they're crossing River Road and going into the parking lot. We're gonna move that. They're gonna cross River Road and take this pathway section. And that's right where you make that sharp turn. So
It's not too close to homes.
yeah,
maybe a
Before you
Wheeler
get to your
condo.
backyard. when you-
that's it.
To the right, or just to the north of that path. And then you have a couple private homes. Brad's got his hand raised as well.
Oh,
Yeah, James, do we have other easements for pathways? And if we do, what does the indemnification clause look like on those?
we do, I don't know off the top, I can't remember off the top of my head. The last one that came to the board was for Fremont Crossing. So off of Abbott Drive, as you're heading kind of toward the village, you make a left into the Fremont Crossing driveway. And we have a pathway that crosses right there. Part of that pathway is on their property. And so we entered into an easement agreement with them. I just can't remember. We did it like 4 years ago. I don't remember what the indemnification. But essentially this was the same format as what we used for that agreement.
Just curious to know if we're being consistent about our risk or not.
Indemnification is an area where most people just glaze over it because it's just like, what does this mean? But if it has to be enforced, then you pay attention really
Yeah.
quick.
Okay.
So that's why my experience has been you try to get a cap on that so that you're limiting your liability.
Gotcha. With regard to the other two, there's the Mountain View Lodges, which is right there by Shark by Circle 2. We've met, Mark Smith and I met with them twice, representatives from their HOA twice. We've laid out an alignment for them and that they're happy with. We've provided them a draft of similar to this easement right here. They provided some feedback on that. So we're going to be refining that draft, creating the exhibits that go along with that. And it's going to be very similar to what you see here. Again, they have agreed right now to grant us the easement without any cash exchange, which is good. And to Brad's point, on the north side of their property, there is an easement that crosses, or there's a pathway section that crosses their property. That's a very sharp curve in it. That there's accidents. People end up coming to their unit saying, I crashed on my bike. We're going to, at their request, kind of in exchange, like we did with the Meadow Houses, we're going to be getting rid of that curve and we're going to be straightening that out in that section. So again, that's kind of the negotiation. And interesting, when we were talking to them about it, that's a section of pathway that doesn't have an easement on it. So as part of that easement agreement, there'll be exhibits that show the new pathway section and an easement for the realigned pathway section. Now, that said, I can't tell you everywhere. We have 34 miles of pathway, and working with Mark, we know that when the pathways were built years and years ago, there are a variety of sections across multiple private properties where we do not have easements. I can't tell you where, because we have thousands of private properties and it would take a survey of all of our pathways to determine exactly where the property lines are in relation to those pathways. Now, it doesn't mean huge sections. There's probably little sections that cross corners of people's property. Vast majority is within our common area, within property SROA controls. Like with Fremont Crossing, it was a pathway that was in existence. Fremont Crossing was developed years ago. Someone on their HOA was looking at property lines and figured out where our pathway curves to get away from the road and away from where you're turning into the driveway. So there's separation that, oh, that crosses their private property. So we ended up entering into the easement agreement.
And on the other side of that, on the Beaver Drive side, we removed a pathway that was next to Fremont Crossing because half of that pathway was actually on their property. And we already had a pathway adjacent on the other side of Beaver Drive. So we didn't need two pathways in that same area. So that was removed. We put a berm there as well.
So again, to Brad's question, yes, we do have other easements, but there are areas where we do not have easements. And to determine that is a big project. It would be, so for example, something that we presented during capital project discussion is down in the Meadow area, where we have an alignment of, here's where we need pathways in that area, because there's not a lot of pathways. Here's where, pathway alignment would be on SROA property. Here's where it would cross private property. Here's where we need easements. They also figured out some of the pathways in that area do cross private property, so. It's a liability for everybody that we could clean up.
So, in 6 minutes, we have
Yeah, they were gonna be here in person, so I think we can,
oh, they're coming in person.
yes.
Well, okay, does anybody need a break before is there time to do, the hybrid meetings discussion?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, let's do it.
I'll jump in real quick, is the hybrid meetings, was a request that you got from the owner. And the request was essentially to have all of the board meetings and all of the committee meetings function as this meeting functions. This meeting is already, and I'm not sure hybrid meeting is hybrid is the right terminology.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's to have live and in person and have the capability to participate virtually. So just as Brad and Dale are participating virtually, they're panelists, they can speak. There's actually in the planned community statute, we have a requirement for your board meetings that people be allowed to attend and participate virtually. Now, we have a live YouTube broadcast, so they can attend, but to be able to participate, they would need to make a request and say, I want to participate, for example, during the owner's forum. I want to speak. We can activate, allow them, unmute them, allow them to speak. And then when they're done, we can mute them. So we've done that for these meetings. Before some of you are on the board, we've done it. For the committee meetings is another issue. We definitely could just do it in the same fashion. We have committee meetings where people participate, committee members participate virtually, just like we do here. The request would be though, can we do a YouTube broadcast of those? And can we, or should we allow participation virtually at those? For the design committee, we actually do that because some folks are there for their project and their builder or they themselves as an owner are out of town and they're able to talk to the design committee. We don't broadcast those on YouTube and we do not record those, post them to our webpage though. So that's kind of the request. Should those be broadcast YouTube? Should all owners have the ability to participate in this? Part of the issue would be does it become cumbersome at the meetings to have essentially what could be effectively be an owner's forum section for all committee meetings? Does it affect some of the owner or some of the committee members wanting to be on the committee if these things are recorded and broadcast as opposed to people having to show up in person? I'm just bringing up what if questions. But everything we talked about is possible, right?
Possible, there could be some licensing issues we would have to modify, some scheduling issues, webinar functionality. The complexity of running this, got Richie for the most part camped out in here to do so. So there might be some staffing ramifications. Certainly Zoom offers additional licensing that could enable this. But there's storage on the YouTube side that we have to pay for. There's potentially additional costs that I'm certainly happy to follow to the board to take feedback.
So do you see recordings like of the design committee?
Do I personally?
Well, no, I mean, does SROA see those recordings of design meetings? They should.
Go ahead.
They record it to where Jackie can provide the notes for those meetings. And then once that meeting, then 30 days after that, the recording gets deleted.
Exactly, and because she has the minutes essentially.
Because she's created.
But again, there's no
record of the meeting.
There's no legal requirement to do so for committee meetings, but the request was you know, in an effort of transparency and owners being able to see what's going on in committee meetings. Especially, I mean, we have 80% of our owners don't live in the community, they're not residents. Do they have the ability to see that? So that was the request. I would suggest, I mean, it doesn't require you to take action today, so it's really, here's some of the background information. I would suggest that you pose the question to the committees themselves to get some feedback. What do you think if the committee meeting was broadcast on YouTube? And if you wanted to entertain questions, that you would have people would have the ability to maybe ask those questions or provide comment, and get their feedback.
So when I see hybrid, I'm not thinking YouTube, I'm just simply thinking they call into the Zoom,
That
they
can
have
be part of
access
that
to the
too.
Zoom, right? And they can, you know, however we allow in-person folks to currently participate in our committee meetings, it should be similar to those that are
And it could be
dialed
just
virtually.
like this without any YouTube.
Exactly.
So that could be.
That's what,
Without
when I read
recording,
that, that's not.
Without any YouTube. And they would, other than unless you had an owners forum, they would be muted at all times.
Correct.
They could just listen.
They can make a request to be a panelist with no guarantee they're gonna be able to speak. There would be no YouTube broadcast, no YouTube recording. And it's just a way for the, instead of being here, they're there.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I wouldn't want to approve that today or tomorrow. I'd want to
No.
think it through some more
Yeah.
and have it in a writing format of how that would work and how it would affect the IT department and.
Well, get an idea from,
That's pretty funny.
On that note.
well, I think it's important. I already don't like the term hybrid anymore because it's getting used all over the place, and what the person bringing it up thinks it is different than what other people might think it is. And a key word for me is participation. So, do they have to do it like we do? Okay, let's go around the table, identify who's here, owners forum, you get 3 minutes, then you're not involved. Is it? I think it'd have a chilling effect if they're participating in a different way in the meeting, on the people that do the work. Think of like, the owner improvement committee. They're doing the work, but then they have people saying, this is what you ought to do.
But I don't think, you know, the meeting wouldn't be run any different. The meeting format would be the same.
Yes.
People would be able to be a panelist and watch.
Right.
And that it would only be at just like if somebody showed up at design committee meeting, for example, it would be at the discretion of that committee and the committee chair as to whether they want to let them speak or not. It would be
So-
conducted exactly the same.
Let me just ask a clarifying question. When we were approving like the rules and regs and things like that, we had to have the board approval of who would be on that. If you opened it up in a hybrid environment, does that bring that into question?
And again, the request was for board meeting and committees. That's getting into the task force
Okay.
level.
Okay.
So that wasn't the request, but certainly, I mean, how far down the process do you want to, I'll go, is with regard to a task force, there's an opportunity to submit comments to the task force. There was a solicitation for comments on the rules and reg update that were given to the task force to allow that participation at the task force level. The task force could say, we're gonna solicit comments at the very beginning, like an owners forum, and then shut it down. I'm not trying to shut any participation down, but those meetings a lot of times are like the sausage making, like I said, it can get, as much as you get good input, it can be very disruptive to the process.
Well, and even when those committees start, I know with the strategic task force, we had a lot of people that came in and they just wanted to get their own personal opinion on the table, and then they stopped attending.
Yeah.
So I can just see if we open something like that up, it'd be constant, disruption. But, if we were to make things hybrid, I do think we need to make it very clear that, people are going to be put on mute at a certain point. And I don't think that was the request. But we would have to put parameters, very clear parameters around what we could do in order to have productive meetings and to follow the rules around who can and who cannot participate based on what we just ran into. It has to be approved by the board, et cetera.
I think the current process at times of allowing written comments causes people that want to contribute to make their thoughts more succinct and to the point, rather than rambling and other types of behavior. So it's one thing to be watching the committee working. It's another whole thing to have any opportunity at all to talk. Versus putting it in writing, putting it succinctly in a couple paragraphs, and then sharing it with the committee.
Because additionally, when everything needs to be approved, ultimately, if it's a change to the rules or design manual, those things come to the board. And you're the ultimate decision maker. So for example, Rules and Regulation Task Force is going to go to the Covenants Committee and then the board. And people are afforded the ability to come to the owners forum and speak to the board on that item and inform you, here's what I think about the draft that's out there. They could do that at owners forum. Another idea, I'll just bring it up, is because we function very much like a city or county jurisdiction, municipality, oftentimes when there are big amendments to zoning ordinance or codes, they have a separate public hearing for that item. And so potentially that could lead to a special meeting of the board. But so rules and regulations, you could have a special meeting of the board. The only thing you're going to consider that day is that item. And you have a public hearing and people are afforded the opportunity to come and speak. They can participate virtually. And you can give them 3 minutes to say their piece, and it's not on anything else other than that. It separates it out from these meetings as well, so it kind of makes these meetings more efficient, and then your focus is only on that item at this special.
So my opinion is to be as inclusive as possible. Where have any sort of unintended negative consequences on the actual meetings. And given that most of our owners are not here full time, right? I think we need to look at opportunities. I think we start with the committees and maybe not this year start with the task forces, but we have some parameters. You can set it up so that when people join outside of committee members, they're muted upon entry. They can maybe chat if they have a question or comments, but we don't have to deal with having people take themselves off mute. So I think we just figure out a way to make it work and try it out with the committees. And then if it seems to work well, we can maybe expand that to task force.
I would actually recommend, there's two sides to this and I'm not disagreeing with you at all. But I think there's two sides. Number one, we need to definitely plan what the infrastructure needs to look like in order to make this happen.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we can just assume that what we have today will make it work well. Because we've already had complaints that people can't be heard. The cameras aren't working well. I know that we always have to remind ourselves to look for people that are raising their hands, and I always feel bad about that. So we've got to plan that with Gary and understand exactly what this means in order to do it a quality way. And then we also have to put the parameters around just exactly as you just outlined and just make sure that's clear.
Yeah.
And then, so what I'm saying is, let's not jump, but let's definitely put a proposal together on what it would look like and then bring it in here and just determine whether we can do it or not.
Are we hopping ahead of asking the committees what they think?
No, I think we should ask the committees as well before we do anything.
That's fine too.
And we can put a proposal together and then
Get their input.
I don't see this working very well with the finance committee, because again, there's lots of discussion. You don't want to get people all worked up about something that's not gonna get to a final form.
And then it goes out in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you think about this budget, you know, we started out at one level, we ended up at quite a different level. And that's what we were elected to do and appointed to do, is to represent the owners, think it all through and get it to work. I don't know. But anyway, you can ask the committees.
But today anyone can walk into the finance committee.
Yeah.
So there's, I mean,
Theoretically,
in actuality, it's not fair.
nobody's almost have no one walking. I mean, there's been,
And there might not be a lot of people
Same-
dialing it, yeah,
exactly.
right? We don't know.
So I think what we can do as staff is we can put this on a December agenda, again, work session agenda. Kind of maybe outline, here's how it would work for the committees. And or task forces, it would be the same.
I'd actually.
From an
say
IP
January.
wise, here's
Yeah, I think,
how it would
I think I
work.
would wait until January, cause I know we've got a lot going
Yeah.
on in December, but,
we don't want a long December meeting.
yeah.
I'm here either
But
way.
but it's also gonna take time to gather what the structure looks like. So that it's good and solid, cause you don't wanna just piece it together, cause then you're gonna have complaints coming in at you right and left, because I couldn't hear, I couldn't get on, I couldn't.
Okay, speaking of long meetings.
Yeah.
Our attorneys are here, and so we have, the motion. Your language. Yes.
I move to recess the public meeting and reconvene an executive session under the authority given. Article 4, Section 11, to discuss contractual, personnel, and legal matters that may be subject to a claim will be released.
I second that.
Thank you, Pam. All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Abstain?
They want to fix it, but now got this.
Oh, there's one.
Stop these recordings.
It's gonna be take one, pass it. Okay, we're just getting everything stopped in the meeting. One now.